Call the meeting to order. Roll call, Rusty.
Here.
Rich is not here. Dr. Pasufin is not here yet. Dr. Harrell, here. Ken Kirkpatrick. I think that's a here.
Here.
Ari Vandeven.
Here.
And Teresa Stevens here. Thank you. Ken, would you please lead us?
Yes, ma'am. How are you guys? Lord, we just love you and thank you for this wonderful day you provide us. We just invite you here today. Grant us wisdom, discernment, the ability to make wise decisions with the assets that you've entrusted us with. Lord, we just ask that you, through the leadership of this group, transform Marion County to be a little bit more like heaven. Father, we just ask this in your Son's name. Amen.
Thank you, Ken. We are pleased to have all of our guests here today. So we have a lot to say grace over, so we will try and make it go fast. And with that, we will start out with our public comments. Do we have any public comments? Hearing none, we will move on to the previous minutes, approval of the minutes. We have the Pillar Workshop meeting minutes from September 24th. If everyone has had an opportunity to review those, I will need a motion. We have a motion to approve. We need a second. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes passed. September 30th, our board meeting. We need a motion if you've reviewed those.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes passed. Thank you. All right, moving on to new business. Kurt? Deborah?
Okay, I have a brief update. The first thing I wanted to point out is we had a wonderful recognition of Jessica Cole, who was honored as Citizen of the Week by Mayor Ben Marciano during
Of the month, not the week.
of the month. Multiply that times 4.33. And it was during the city council meeting, and it was truly recognizing Jessica Cole as our representative in her role as Vice President of Community Health Programs, overseeing, at a minimum, our Fitness and Nutrition in Schools program, the Active Marion Project, and the Community Home Project, altogether impacting one way or another through education or direct programming about 96,000 citizens. So significant impact, and it's very heartening to see because internally we just love working with Jessica, and she is an outstanding leader and just wonderful to work with. And it's great to have outside recognition that from others in the community that see what good work she does and how well she represents our community. And she also has a phenomenal team to work with her. So we're really blessed to have her recognized, and thank you, Mayor Marciano. The next topic I wanted to address is I wanted to inform the board that I had a request from His Compassion, which is a food bank here in Marion County that delivers food at no cost to food pantries. So the recipient or repository of food from multiple organizations is His Compassion, and then they distribute out to churches and the food pantries. And they contacted me with an opportunity, very short window of opportunity before this board meeting, to obtain 9 truckloads of food from FEMA, and we had to make a quick decision on that. It was in response to the last hurricanes, and I do have authorization to make a purchase for an item like this as long as I notify the board. It's very infrequent that I do this, but as long as I inform the board and get ratification after the fact, so you're aware of such a purchase. And the $9,800, instead of there being 9 trucks, it ended up being 11 trucks that showed up with food, and they are distributing to citizens throughout Marion County. And so I wanted to make you aware of this situation and the opportunity that we had to help our food deserts and to help people that were impacted by the wind damage and power outages and food spoilage in Marion County. The next item I wanted to address is, for many years, since we leased the hospital in April of 2014, we've been working to close out all facets of Monroe Regional Health Systems, which was the organization that operated Monroe Regional Medical Center. And we closed out the retirement accounts and most of the workers' comp and any other outstanding issues. The last vestige of that organization was the pension. So the hospital district fully funded the pension as we closed out, and that's on our books, but also we had to work on the multi-year steps of going through and trying to find all the recipients that were eligible for pensions over all the years that Monroe offered pensions. So we hired 2 independent groups to seek anyone that was a recipient of pensions, and it took many years to get through. And then we had to be audited by the PBGC, Pension Benefits Guarantee Corporation, which really is an insurance policy. So if you didn't happen to find everyone and distribute funds to them, it's almost like a centralized insurance policy. So if someone, let's say, finally realized, oh, they've been trying to reach me for several years to collect anything that's owed to me, it goes up to the state, and now it's their obligation, and the funds would come out of the PBGC account. So we just closed that out. We finalized the audit, and basically it's just a multi-year search of everyone that we could find. And Deborah led that, and I don't envy her because some of the records were just on note cards from many years ago. So we finalized that, and there were no financial penalties. And what I mean by that is sometimes if the PBGC determines that you didn't do adequate due diligence, they will ask for additional funding to supply that fund. So, and we had no additional payments or penalties, so that's fully closed out at this point. So, thank you, Deborah.
Yes.
Yeah. Then also, I wanted to follow up on a question that Rich asked at the last meeting regarding low-income pool funds. So, low-income pool funds are what is actually a match that you can provide to federally qualified health centers like Langley and Heart of Florida. Those are the 2 FQHCs in our community. And Rich asked, is there a way, since Langley is no longer doing the dental bus, is there a way to provide those LIP funding, that LIP funding to Heart of Florida so they can expand their FQHC services? And the answer is no. We give the maximum amount that HRSA, the Health Resources and Services Administration, we give the maximum amount for Heart of Florida to draw down maximum funds from HRSA. So the answer is we can't provide Heart of Florida with any additional funds. It goes to the organization, not the county. And then just an update, we attended a ribbon cutting ceremony for the new EMS Central facility, which is where the paramedics are centrally located, not too far from Advent Ocala. And it's basically a new hub that can hold up to 12 EMS vehicles. And now that it's more centrally located, they have a better way to respond throughout the county and have a single place of deployment. And this, why were we involved in this, is because we actually owned the land that Advent Health was leasing. It was just vacant property. And we had to do a multi-way deal with the hospital district because we own the property. Advent Health had the rights to the property for 40 years, 30 more years. And then the county actually had a building that they swapped for our land that Advent Health and us agreed upon a couple years ago, that it was of equal enough value to make that swap, and Advent Health will utilize that county property. So we just attended this ribbon cutting ceremony, and honestly, if you get a chance to see it, it's on the opposite side of 441 from Advent Health. Just go back a little bit, and if you want, we can, oh, there's the address there. And take a look at it, because it's really an outstanding facility for our first responders to have camaraderie, to meet. They have an exercise facility, an outstanding place to sleep, whereas their other location was built, what, 1960? So it is quite old. So we're glad to have this for the first responders in Marion County. And then just a brief update on the CF Center for Nursing. So several years ago, we agreed to invest in a way to increase the number of graduating nurses in Marion County. And so we worked on a plan with the College of Central Florida so they could add 50 seats to their annual nursing program. And the benefit is that if we home grow as many nurses as we can through our local community College of Central Florida, that there's an 80% likelihood that these individuals who are doing rotations and practicums at our local hospitals will stay in Marion County. So we agreed to fund, it says 2.4, it's just slightly less than that. And the total cost of the project for building a new nursing facility is about $20 million. We'll find out in the end. So that is coming up. The college will need our funds, because one of the parameters that we have in most of our capital projects is that we are last money in to ensure that the project meets completion or is pretty close to being completed before we invest. And so the maximum amount would be $2.4 million. But as we saw with the Mary Sue Rich Community Center, sometimes when it's last money in, the projected costs were higher than the actual cost. So we may not owe the entire amount. We won't know until we get closer to the end of the project. So we just want to make everyone aware that they'll need our $2.4 million fairly soon to complete the project. Any questions for me?
Very good.
Thank you.
Need a ratification on the food that you bought?
Yes.
So we need a motion,
I move that we approve the purchase of the food that we did.
and so we need a second.
Second.
We have a first and a second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Application, thank you. All right, strategic initiatives.
Hi, we have two presentations tonight that talk about our new focus pillars. So I'm going to turn over to Brady Glover to introduce the speakers for these.
Good evening. Tonight we have two presentations. First is the Vet Resource Center. They are presenting a project that potentially could fall under our new prevention category, and they've worked through the vetting process with staff and our executive team.
Good evening, trustees. Thank you for this opportunity to present our proposal for cancer screening and prevention services for the veterans in our community that served in the global war on terror. They are at high cancer risk due to their exposure to toxins and burn pits. Many thousands of these veterans are dying of cancer before they reach 45. In Marion County, we are home to over 46,000 veterans. 16,000 of them served in the global war on terror. Despite their high-risk status, these veterans are not eligible for cancer screening unless they exhibit symptoms. This gap in care is where we can make a life-saving difference. The Gallery Early Warning Cancer Screening Test uses a groundbreaking technology often referred to as a liquid biopsy. It detects over 50 types of cancer by analyzing the DNA that is shed by growing cancer cells. It has been approved throughout the Florida HCA system for over a year, as confirmed by Alan Casey, the CEO of Ocala HCA. Additionally, Dr. Charles Atwood, the principal investigator of the VA's reflection study, has used the Gallery test in national VA research for several years. He has provided a letter of support for both the test and our project. The total of stage 3 and 4 cancer is devastating, both in human and financial terms. By investing in early detection, we not only save lives, but reduce long-term health care costs. We are requesting an investment of $300,000, which will provide 375 life-saving cancer tests. A primary goal is to educate Marion County citizens on cancer prevention best practices for monitoring their health and living fuller, healthier lives. I want to point out that 100% of your investment directly supports this project. We cover all administrative costs. We will carefully track each test, ensuring that veterans, regardless of their insurance status, receive the appropriate care if they test positive. Multiple nurse navigator systems are available to provide personalized cancer treatment. For veterans who cannot afford it, we have a source of funds to ensure they receive high-quality cancer care and treatment. Our mission is to save lives and to protect those who have given so much for our country. Our vision is to foster awareness, encourage proactive health management, and make Marion County a leader in veteran cancer prevention and care. Together, we can make a lasting difference in the lives of our veterans. Thank you for considering this critical investment in their future. May I answer any questions?
Yes, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. Clearly, there is a need for this in our community, particularly for the vets who we owe a lot to. Not to drill down in some of the weeds, but upon review of the application, this would be the proper. So a few questions regarding the application that was submitted. I think I read where the last veterans that have been going through this test have had to go to Tampa.
That is correct. The VA has been in a 2-year study of the Gallery, and that test has been offered in 8 VA hospitals around the country, and that test is beginning to come to its end. That test is free to any veteran that is in the VA system. Unfortunately, only about 44% of the veterans are in the VA system. And so that is where we have been directing most of our efforts. We have been able to direct about 250 veterans down to Tampa to take that test. All of us, most of us here, have already taken that test. And it is a very real relief to know that even though I flew through 2 clouds of Agent Orange on separate times, that I am free of cancer, or at least the types that they can detect, which is pretty much they do a great job of stage 1 and 2 on all of the cancers, but the 5 aggressive ones are even better. And the one that they don't have a test for otherwise is pancreatic cancer, and this picks up on that. So it is a significant difference in what we as Vietnam veterans experienced, because these veterans not only have this high danger, they are not aware of it. They have no idea that this has happened to them, and there's really not an effort out there to educate them on that.
In particular, my question though is with the new funding source, if approved tonight, would they still have to go to a VA hospital, or is there a way to have that testing done locally here? And if not locally here, what is the means of transporting these veterans down there to have these tested?
Yes, sir. This project is purely Marion County. It has, Marion County has nothing to do with the VA. The VA will take those folks, and as we find people who are qualified, and as long as they still have the test, we will send them to Tampa rather than spending the money from the grant. We want that on people who are not eligible for the VA, or after the VA actually closes that testing off.
So the testing will be done in Marion County?
The testing will be
Okay.
done in Marion County, yes.
That's it, thank you. What else did I have? You talk about just some, you have a lot of volunteers, there's no paid administration, does I understand?
That's correct, we're all
Yeah.
100% volunteer.
So tell me a little bit, what is the vetting process you go through to vet your volunteers?
Well,
It may not, you don't need to.
sometimes they just have to be breathing.
It looks like it's a combination of both past veterans as well as non-vets.
That's correct. Most of us are members of the Marion County Memorial Honor Guard. We have 3 E9s, which are the top level of the enlisted ranks of E8. We have Marines, we have even a Coast Guard. We're a very varied group of veterans, and all of them are supportive of what we're doing. We have a board that is made up basically of those same people. We have picked other folks that we felt would be able to help us to go out into the community and in other areas and get donations for our project. Because those were board members that we were having to help us. Our board members, most of us don't know how to raise money. All we know how to do is to protect our fellows, veterans, and our brothers and sisters.
So in terms of who's actually administering the grant?
Who has actually administered the grant is the Vet Resource Center. We're a 501c3 charity. I'm the president of that organization, and I basically will be in charge of the administration, doing the accounting and building the databases, of course, using the facilities that you have for the tracking. We intend to have a fairly massive database, because what we want to do with this is to only use boots on the ground and over the airs. The air crews are the ones who have the highest incidence of cancer. A lot of times because they're flying through it, and the other time it's because of the petroleum that's being used and all of the different systems that they're in. So we are trying to focus this on Gulf War veterans who have actually been there, not just during the era, because they're the highest risk. We have so many of these veterans in Marion County that will continue to work through, but we want to go out to that high-risk area the first.
So we would set them up in Mindshare as well
Okay.
to do some tracking.
So once, if a vet unfortunately was to be detected for cancer, if they were to be detected, what's the next step that we would offer that veteran?
The next step that will be offered is that what we will be doing is having them sign a release at the beginning to allow us to track that. And then we'll be giving them the opportunity to decide, obviously, what their own procedure might be. If someone decides they want to go to Indiana, then they will. However, we've talked with a number of folks here, and Bob Livingston, our Marine, has been involved in hospice for many, many years and dealt across the board with these organizations. And we've talked to a number of them, to their oncology sides and the heads of those departments. They're all very anxious to take these folks in to help them. The problem, of course, is that some of them may not be able to pay. We're very fortunate to find that there's a fund out of Gainesville that is government funded, that all we have to do is have a referral from here up to the UF health area that has that funding, And they will be taken, given excellent care, both of their nursing navigators, all at no expense to them. Because part of our problem is when you find a cancer in somebody, you want to make sure that they have some place to take care of it, to go to. And yes, please.
My name is Bob Levinson. I've had the opportunity to work not only with Hospice in Marion County for over 12 years with veterans. I was on the board there. My wife and I have been working through many of our health systems here, the major hospitals and the cancer centers. That resource center is part of the Cancer Alliance here, so we will be working with every opportunity in oncology and cancer. If you go to our website right now, you'll see every hospital system, you'll see every single navigator that's listed for all of them. We've got our phone numbers there, we're available 24/7. So if somebody has an issue, we are gonna be able to help them and help guide them and use our existing hospitals here. And if somebody wants to go to MD Anderson or Moffitt or Mayo or wherever they want to go, they're certainly welcome to do that. But we've got great resources here and great medical facilities and great medical personnel to help them.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry I'm kind of late, but I had a couple of questions I wanted to answer. One is that I think the sizable investment from us to population of like 300 patients is what we're looking at to begin with. Assuming we find something, what is the plan for long-term expansion of this? I don't think we have enough resources to fund all the veterans if we ever find them.
Thank you, sir, because the problem is enormous, obviously. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to make sure that we have matching funds. We're going to be going out and trying to approach a number of folks to match the funds that you're giving us so we can expand those. That test is $949 normally, if you get it out there. We're getting it for $649, which is still expensive, and it only will accommodate, so many veterans. But as we add money and as we go forward, we intend to absolutely get a test everybody we're able to raise the money for. And they will be able, I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's a process to make sure there's expansion to Medicare reimbursement for these processes. This should.
That will happen when this test receives FDA approval. They're up at the top tier of their application process. So as soon as they are able to get that approval, a number of things will change. Right now, a doctor writes a script that's at the cost of the individual. They can't turn it into any insurance company. There can't be any reimbursement. Like we said, it's been in the HCA organization for a long time, but the doctors only write it if they know that the patient can pay for it. So that cost hopefully will come down. Plus, one of the things that we're doing is to try to make sure that we maintain enough records and enough demographics that as we grow this, that we can get the VA to come back into this and start giving these tests, because we're hoping that no one that we test has cancer. But we think because of the high incidence of cancer in these areas and the fact that they really haven't studied that particular area, that our numbers will help the VA to make a decision to go forward and help all of our veterans.
So, how often is the test have to be administered? Is it one test, you're done, or has it got to be re-administered?
It's like the other cancer screening test. It's not a one and done. It's a where you are right now. They advise that you have it every 1 or 2 years, just as they do some other cancer screening tests, because it doesn't project what's going to happen. It's just analyzing what's in your blood right now.
And your main, how you are going to administer this, is it without any paid help, all volunteers? So if a vet decides they need to get a test, how would they go through this process? And assuming there's funding in place, how would you identify that, and then how would you process that?
Okay.
And follow up with that veteran?
And that is part of the main part of the task, because the education and identification is what we are trying to do effectively, starting with our website. We put a website out there that has 600 links on it for our veterans. They register through there. We've been making for the last 9 months presentations about this problem in different VFWs, American Legions. We have a large number of vet clubs in some of the over 55 communities. We've been in those. We've been going out and making any kind of opportunity that we have to spread this information. This gentleman on my left is a real Command Sergeant Major. He's an E9. And he taught at the Command Sergeant Major School. He has folks that he taught all over this country and has already spread out to them to try to move this. And we've not only accelerated the number of people using the Tampa VA, we've been able to get feedback that we have affected the other 7 VAs also because of our outreach and our outsource. Plus, as old as we are, we're finally getting some help on social media. and we're putting that out and using it because as Bob said, he said, we were trying to do onesies and twosies at the American Legions, and he logged onto his Marine site and said they had 120,000 people following them. So we have started pushing out that information because our first thrust is to try to get somebody educated to the reason that he has a problem, because they don't know it. And they're not looking for cancer causes like we are as old people. They don't know when they start losing weight without any reason, or they continually have a cough that doesn't go away, or they have a wound that doesn't heal. We're invincible as veterans, until we get to my age, of course. And they don't really know that they even need to be looking. And so what's happening is they don't get a diagnosis until they have a symptom. When you have a symptom with these aggressive cancers, you're usually in stage 3 and stage 4. They have found that they're finding over 50,000 veterans a year with cancer. How are they finding them? With the symptoms. What we're trying to do is to get on the front end of this, because at stage 1 and stage 2, it's a tremendous difference. And not only in your life and what you're doing, but how it affects your family and the devastation that stage 3 and 4 does by taking away all of your assets just to try to stay alive.
If I may interject, sir, I spent, again, like you said, I spent 28 years in the Army. I've touched a lot of soldiers' lives. Our main responsibilities are accomplishment mission and take care of our troops. We did a pretty good job of accomplishing our mission. And while we were in uniform, we took care of our troops, the good ones and the bad ones. The problem is when we hang up our uniforms, there's no one there to look out for us. Our job, hard to believe, we're a little hard-headed sometimes, but they do listen to us when we talk to these young veterans and say, you need to get your butt down here and get tested. You know what they do when they see all this? They do it. And that's what we need your help to convince these young troops to go do that.
One problem is that the VA has a requirement. They've got 4 cancer screenings. That's it within the VA system. And right in their literature, it says you've got to be 50 to 80 years old. So they're taking out the 22-year-old to the 40-year-old, and those are the people that have been subjected to the burn pits and all the other cancers, unfortunately, that they were exposed to while on active duty. And that's the real serious problem. That's who we are testing.
And they don't give them
more veterans from Vietnam.
And they do not give them those tests until they have symptoms. And that is the problem.
Bring this to our attention.
Yes, sir.
Other questions from other trustees?
I kind of follow up on the doctor's question. So, what happens next year? I mean, so you talked about trying to get additional funding and stuff like that.
Yes.
But absent any of that, as we stand today, this would be a one and done proposition, or would the plan be to come back and ask for additional funding?
we will always be coming back and asking for additional money. Thank everybody. But the reality is that we're trying to augment what you're doing with as much outside as we can. We have had an opportunity to talk to Kat Cameron, to Mike Waltz, to a number of the representatives for the state, because we feel like this is a state and government-generated problem, that they should be involved in the funding, and we're trying to make sure that they hear us. And they will hear us, because we've been defined as three bulls in a china shop that are trying to knock everything over. And we are trying to make it work, and make it work as rapidly as we can. So we'll be trying to get government in as rapidly as possible, and we may be coming back to ask for your help to continue that drive.
And you folks are the genesis of this. You guys help us get the data, and we can use that data to make the case for everybody else. So
We've also got a lot of interest with corporate people, not only in our community, but elsewhere. So we're going to be.
Right. We're trying to expand this as rapidly as we can. The number that we're talking about, we think we can pick up very quickly because of the number of veterans here. So we want to expand as rapidly as we can. Also, our intentions are to take these numbers and make a cookie cutter so that the other areas of Florida, the other counties that have hospital districts, can go into this same program and try to help the folks in their counties. And we're not just trying to help the veterans that are beside us. We want to help the veterans across the nation, and we're pushing that.
So they did receive 50,000 from?
Yes, the HUD grant that comes through the county has already confirmed that we have $50,000 from them. That grant is for a low to moderate income, and for the older generation. Our plans are to take that money and use only Vietnam veteran boots on the ground and in the air, because we want both of these studies to be as pure as we can on the sample that we're taking, so that we can make that case when we go in about what kind of a resource they should be actually putting into getting our veterans these tests.
Stephanie, okay. Anyone else? Now's the time to ask. Okay, so based on the presentation that we thank you, Joan.
Thank you very much.
I do have one question,
Yes.
Madam Chair, directed at you, I guess, is that this funding request, where would it come out of, Matt? Is this board discretion? I mean,
This would come out of trustee designated funds,
trustee, okay.
which you currently have, be a carryover from last year and current year funds of totaling about 1.1 million.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, we are consideration for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion on the table, and we would need a second to consider.
Second.
We have a first and a second, so a vote now, all in favor?
Any discussion?
Oh, sorry, Ken, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just, again, I'm still learning how things go. Heard a couple things, last money in, match funding, things like that. Again, if the thought is that this is going to be an ongoing thing, and my guess is that it will be, I would prefer to be the last money in. And so, if I'd be willing to vote yes, to the extent that, to the extent they raise funds, we match those funds up to $300,000. That gets them $600,000 worth of potential funding, but they got to keep knocking over a bunch of stuff in the China store, to be able to avail those funds to them. Again, it's just.
Yeah, I thought that originally to myself, but the only problem that I have is that, here time is of the essence. This early detection to me is critical, and so the longer there's delays in getting these tests made available to these veterans, I think we've run the risk of more people being impacted by early detection of cancer, which is, I don't know, but I think your chance of surviving cancer is so much greater if you can identify it early on. So I don't know what their timeline would be to raise the $250,000 to match our $300,000. That's what, I just get pause on that for that reason, Ken.
Do we have a plan to fund this every year for $300,000?
Well, I mean, it's my assumption is the motion is to entertain $300,000 for this year and this year only. They're welcome to come back to us next year, but that would be another discussion.
And part of our monitoring and managing, if the trustees are to choose to fund this, would to assist them with their next phase of their program. That's what we do with all of our grantees.
And
So
to
if
help
it's an
them.
appropriation, if it's whatever the case may be, we'd be working with them to determine other funding streams potentially.
I agree with, what I think is that we should go ahead with this funding this year, but for next year we should match funds. So this way we have an incentive to do other things besides our funding from us. And so in a sense, I agree. So I think it's a good impetus to get them started. I honestly think it's still a lot of money for that process for so many veterans, but I think I'm willing to propose that we fund this at this point. But we should be careful with the monies from going forward.
I think the more testing they do and the more information we get and the more results we have helps also with the studies and then the FDA and then other insurances picking it up. And this is probably going to be a non-issue in a year or two when insurance decides to pay for it. So,
Or the
but we
VA
may be
gets
helping
it.
with the data for this, for ongoing for a long time by funding it this year, and then probably won't even need it, hopefully.
Or a lesser amount.
A lesser amount.
Michelle?
If I could just offer some comments, I know I don't have a vote at this table, but I am very familiar with this group and all the good that they do in this community with their efforts. I have no doubt that they will continue to do what they can to raise dollars because I don't know if you've really heard the passion that they have to save lives. And they are reaching the younger veterans that are not even going to be tested. And this is, I mean, we have 46,000 just in Marion County. Well, you know our population, 410. I mean, this is such a significant portion of Marion County veterans that you're going to be impacting possibly longevity of life. And we are talking about, you all as a board, of extending years of life in Marion County. I cannot see how that this would not be benefiting every pillar that you have.
Agreed. Thank you. Any further discussion? We have a first and a second. No other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, everybody. You're going to save a lot of lives. God bless you.
Y'all did the hard work, thank y'all.
Thanks for your work. Thank you. And our E9s are the best administrators in the world.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Yes, no. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break real quick. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Our next guest speaker is our mayor.
Awesome, thank you.
Sorry if I took that away from anybody to announce him.
You know, it's great that I have to follow them. I was supposed to be in front of them. No, it's all good. So first of all, I want to thank you guys. Thank you for your partnership. We've, I don't know if you realize, we partnered with several of the programs and initiatives I have in place. One being the workout with the mayor. And we had over 1,000 people participate in those workouts, all level of fitness. And you guys were a big resource in helping with that. We also promoted the Mary Seward Seminar, which was, to be honest with you, we weren't getting a ton of usage before the workout with the mayor, but we did several there. And it really brought awareness to that facility, and a lot of, you know, being a gym owner, to promote a facility that's free is hard, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of people. Good thing I didn't the big bucks being the mayor of Ocala, but anyway, that's another story. But I will tell you, there's a lot of people that need that facility, so it is a great resource. We're also started the mayor's fitness challenge, like the presidential fitness challenge. I know you can remember that back in the day when you were in school. Now we have the mayor's fitness challenge. Fans has been a big resource. We launched that last week, and that's been a huge hit. And the schools that are participating, the amount of kids has been amazing. We're starting a citywide step challenge in January. All of your city council members, I got them to compete against each other, and they are super excited. We're hoping to get a lot of people involved, and that's being run through your platform, through AMP. So you guys have been great partners already, but when we think about the mental health of our community, we really struggle, not only in our community, but across the country. And as a mayor, I get more calls on mental health issues than anything. Most of the time, people have no idea where to go. They just don't understand what's available to them in the community. So we are proposing today that we have a site that builds awareness, that we use the platform of the mayor. That's one thing that I do have, is a big platform that reaches a lot of people. And I hate to say it, but I don't have a big budget as the mayor, surprisingly. So I'm able to throw $5,000 from the city they carved out towards this cause. But I do believe lives will be saved if we launch this site. I've already started talking about it, and that you guys are going to support it, so no pressure. Hopefully we get a good vote tonight. But I will tell you, lives will be saved from having this. So we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to turn it over to Lauren, and she'll talk a little bit about what this site will be, and hopefully it'll get your approval. But thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Marciano, and thank you, everyone. Good evening. It's good to see you again. Or if you want to go to the next slide, you can go to the next slide. As Mayor Marciano mentioned, this initiative is based on the primary initiative to improve the mental and behavioral and physical health of residents in Ocala and Marion County. The challenge being that not many residents are fully aware of all of the resources that are available to them. So the goal would be to showcase the hospital district's role in behavioral health initiatives in our area through a partnership with the Healthy Ocala Initiative. What we would like to do is bring awareness and engagement to the behavioral and other health resources available in our community. The way we would do that is by creating a landing page on the existing Marion County Hospital District website that would highlight the resources that are available throughout Ocala and Marion County. In addition to that landing page, what we would like to do is have user-generated content for videos. So that content would be explaining how users will benefit from using these resources, and then also utilizing brand ambassadors and community influencers. So well-known members throughout the community, maybe many of you sitting at this table, who are using the Healthy Ocala website and resources and showing people where they can access those. We also would like to propose doing offline marketing, so traditional media like billboards, mailers, promotional items, along with some guerrilla marketing tactics. So meeting people where they are, especially for behavioral health initiatives. So posters, pop-ups, leave-behinds, possibly at restaurants or other places throughout the community. This would be an entirely separate marketing campaign. So what we would need to do is create social platforms for the Healthy Ocala initiative that would then point to the landing page on the hospital district website. What we can do with digital marketing is track everything, so we can see who's coming from those various social platforms. We also propose doing digital ads, so search ads, video ads, and display ads, leading back to the Healthy Ocala landing page. And then also community engagement, so speaking opportunities, interviews, community presentations, opportunities to be on podcast as a guest, and then event sponsorships and community sponsorships. So as far as the strategic roadmap would look, over this next month, we would really like to move forward with standing up that landing page on the hospital district's website. We've been doing a lot of work with updating the pillars and the program landing pages, so this is something that we would fold into that. Also create those resources, so the video content, the digital channels, set up those social platforms, and then through the end of the year to the end of your fiscal year, we would have the design of the printed materials, traditional materials, flyers, billboards, the awareness, the social media, and then that community engagement piece. And then as we move into next year, tracking and making sure that people are visiting this landing page and seeing where they're coming from and adjusting as needed.
I have one more thing I want to say is that I did actually speak to Commissioner Stone. I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot. And we are going to partner with the county on this initiative. So this will not just be Ocala. This will be all of Marion County. We'll be working with the county commissioners to be able to make the impact across our whole county. So,
You're gonna put the city and the county together?
yep.
Yes.
So the city's putting in $5,000, how much?
No, no, no. Yes,
We have 60-some thousand
Yeah.
followers.
they're gonna help us push it out.
We're also putting forth video content as well, so that's also, in addition to the 5,000 video.
So when we look back a year from now, so we do this, I mean, what would success look like?
It's a great question. So success would look like setting those benchmark metrics for the resources. I know that there are several sites out there that we've talked about that we really want to highlight on this landing page. We're really interested in what we love about digital marketing is taking a look at the conversions. So what we would need to do as we're setting this up is make sure the conversions are set up in a way where ideally with help from the community partners, we can see who has visited the website, then funneled through that website, gotten connected with those resources, and then got services. It's a little bit different and a little tricky with HIPAA and privacy laws and all of that, but I am confident that if we're working with community partners, then we can track that and see how many people are truly being helped from this.
I think we'll have to establish the baseline the first year, but the goal would be is how many people, we want to see a significant amount of people using the site, clicking on the locations, and then people's lives being saved ultimately. So
What's the ask?
the dollar amount, what is?
15.2.
15.2.
So I think this is something that, like, I could pull up in my office when I have a family there and show them that they can't, you know, they need access to one of these things, and then you would have it there and say, this is what we have in Marion County while I'm seeing my patients. You go here, go here, go here.
Yes.
And it's part of our Marion County Health Department. Yeah,
Yes.
hospital district, yeah. That would be helpful to me.
So what are physicians doing now?
Oh, I have a white paper, with a list of people that I like, and then I hand it out. But it's also for mental health providers and like, yeah.
And if I can add to that, so working in this community over the past handful of years and in the roles I've been in, that is one of the things I've seen. There is not a singular database of services that are available. And because things change, if it's printed out on a piece of paper, we just need to make sure that it's being updated. With having it on the website, that's something we can do in real time to make sure all of that information is live and updated when people need it.
So who owns the data? We will own the data.
Because, like I said, when we were going through this, is that I'm sure that our mayor has other political aspirations. He's not always going to be the mayor of Ocala. Correct? And that we would still own this website and it can keep on going. That's kind of why we did the landing page idea.
Thank you for clarifying.
Well, I think it would be great to have one repository that someone could go and find everything that they need, help-wise.
It's in line with what we've been talking about.
Right. Exactly.
And again, where would the funds come from, Matt?
The trustee designated funds and appropriate.
Other questions? Okay, well, we need a motion to accept the, go ahead, Stephanie, I'm sorry.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. We need a second.
I second.
We have a second from Dr. Masudakan. Do we have any discussion?
Quick learner.
Okay. You're testing me. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Motion passed.
Thank you guys. I have another minute to get to. Appreciate you guys.
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Okay, as I said, we have a lot to say grace over, so we're going to jump right into investments. So
You gotta put your earphones on.
That's in the other room, I'll pick it up after.
So you should see my
I know. You're I'm a real person. I know, it's nice actually looking at faces on the tops of everyone's hair and just comparing hairlines. So, to Teresa's point, I'll do my best to be brief and just so you're aware of what's coming. I'll talk for just under 10 minutes hopefully, and then I'll pass it over to Greystone, and then Teresa and Crescent who will talk for about 5 minutes each. If you remember nothing else from my presentation, please try to remember these 4 points. One is over the last 12 months, the portfolio has performed very, very well. It's risen by 19% in value. That's over $40 million in dollar terms. Second is, when we look back over longer periods of time, 3 years, 5 years, we are still seeing that at the aggregate level, which is where I'll focus my comments on, the fund performance is still lagging the benchmark. So really strong absolute performance, still some work to do to catch up with the benchmark. The third point is, given where markets are, we really continue to believe in this asset allocation program we agreed earlier this year and we're working to over the next 2 years. And then the fourth point is, a few minutes on at the end of my presentation, we are in the process of designing a more holistic dashboard, a tool to be able to more meaningfully discuss performance, both backwards looking and also forward looking. So if we move on market commentary, really the points to take away here is inflation in the US kind of continues to fall back to target as it does in most developed markets. We have seen that growth here has continued to be very, very robust, albeit less so in other parts of the world, such as Europe. And the Federal Reserve, as many central banks, has started cutting interest rates. So we've moved on to an interest rate cutting cycle. And whilst there's a bit of uncertainty how much more this year, but there's a full expectation of further interest rate cuts next year. So it's almost a kind of Goldilocks soft landing story on a backwards looking basis. However, as we kind of flip the mirror and look forwards, we do think there is a potential risk that inflation could re-accelerate. When I say inflation comes down, that doesn't mean things are cheaper, it means things are getting more expensive at a slower rate. So we think that inflation could re-accelerate next year as interest rate cuts do continue. And whilst top level economic data is strong, when you look underneath the hood, there are more and more kind of areas of, call it unrest or pressures building underneath the surface. So at the leading economic indicator level, that's been negative for a while, and that's something that we are not concerned about, but certainly does point towards perhaps rougher roads from an economic perspective going forwards. The third point is that public equity markets and bond markets are owning publicly listed companies and lending to those companies. The valuations of those are almost priced to perfection. And so on a go-forward basis, we're not expecting high returns from those areas. And that's why I say we really believe in the asset allocation plan and the glide path to get there, because some of the best opportunities are in alternatives markets. On the next slide, only pick up 3 numbers here, and you can't really read them anyway, frankly, and certainly I can't, is US equities over the last year are up 35%. International equities up 25% and core bonds up 12%. So that's the kind of Goldilocks scenario in the 1 year we've been in, and it's great that we've been able to capture a big proportion of that return. If we move forward a couple of slides to the asset allocation chart, this just makes the one more slide, please. Sorry, Kimberly. This just looks at the overall portfolio at the end of September. So just over $312 million at an aggregate level. Everything is in line with the IPS range, with the one exception being private real assets, and we know that that is a legacy position held within the Greystone portfolio, and when they can liquidate, that will get their money back, they will, and redeploy it. So no concerns there. If we skip forward 5 slides actually to the corpus table slide, I think it's slide 25, if that's okay. One after that, 26. So this is the slide you're very familiar with. The point I want to make here is if you look at the left-hand column, which is the market value, we're essentially back at the peak. You know, we're at $315 million at the end of 2021, that's calendar year 2021. We obviously fell in 2022 with markets, but we've really climbed the mountain back up, and we're pretty much at the same point now. That being said, we've had insane levels of inflation over that time. So if you look at the over-under column on the right-hand side, that level of buffer that we're looking at there, we've still got some way to go, but we're trending in the right direction. If we move forward one slide to 27. So if we maybe blow this up, thank you so much, Kimberly. You know, when we talk about performance attribution, this is what we're doing. We're looking at how the fund performed versus how the benchmark performed and saying, okay, and again, this is at the aggregate level, I don't want to steal the thunder of the 3 OCIO providers. You know, what are the causes of outperformance or underperformance? And if you think about it, each of the providers that can really add value in two main ways. One, we think of asset allocation as kind of like a pumpkin pie. We're in almost Thanksgiving season. It's which assets, how many slices are we dividing the pie into, and what are the size of each slice? That's asset allocation. Each of the managers can either be overweight or underweight where that target range is. And that's one way they can add value by kind of holding the timing of the market right, and let's say being overweight US equities over the last year has certainly added value. The second way is within each slice, picking a manager that can beat the benchmark that represents that slice. So the first point, asset allocation, is green, and generally what you see here, both over the last 6 months and over the last 12 months, is strong levels of absolute performance, moderately lagging the benchmark, and that lagging the benchmark mainly coming through active manager decisions. So you can see that orange on the top right-hand side is detracting, means it's pointing to the left, but green is pointing to the right. And if we move to the next slide, over the last 1 year, it's almost exactly the same picture. So the portfolio is up 19%, the benchmark is up 19.9%, and it's been a combination of strong active allocation decisions offset by manager selection, particularly within US equities. And I won't go into the details that we can answer questions if you have them. And then the final slide I just wanted to touch on was slide 35. And so as Kimberly's pulling that up, this is a prototype of a landing page and really a dashboard to say, when we're discussing each of the three providers and their performance, one before that, if you may, the one with the small circles, perfect. What we want to do is much more, rather than focus, we meet monthly, which is great for transparency, but it's really hard to kind of keep the big picture in mind. And so when we're doing a dashboard, we're really focusing on what 3-year performance is, 5-year performance is, 7-year performance is, given that a big chunk of the OJO providers' investments, they can't really see the results of that until 5, 7, even 10 years have passed. Now, clearly Greystone, they've just passed their 3rd year anniversary, so that's why we've included the 3-year column, but increasingly our focus will shift to the right there. And we're looking at quantitative measures, which are backward-looking measures, think of it as your kid's report card, and then forward-looking measures, thinking as potential on a go-forward basis. So backward-looking measures, we're looking at success versus what is our North Star? Our North Star is, can this portfolio exist in perpetuity? What does it need to do that? It needs to achieve the annual spending rate plus the rate of inflation. So that, in terms of ranking order, that is top priority, and that is top priority over longer time periods. Secondly is, are the portfolios beating their benchmarks? Are those two active allocation and manager selection decisions adding value? And then thirdly is, and we don't want to be led by this, which is why it's last, but we also don't want to be blind to it, how does the Marion County Hospital District's portfolio compare to other foundations? Be they hospital district, be they other 501c3s, be they other permanent foundations that have similar spending targets to you. So you can see them there. The intention is not to go through in detail today, partly because we haven't filled out the right-hand side. And that's, frankly, as much as it helpful as it can be to look in the back, a really decision should be made on forward information, but that's harder to kind of ascertain, and so we're working through it. All providers are being proactively helpful here. A very long questionnaire to try and pull out and inform you of what are their skills in terms of the breadth of the team, the depth of the team, the skill that they bring, the experience they have with clients just like you at the institutional level. Secondly is, each of the organizations has manager research teams, and it's really Wilshire kind of independently looking at each of those and asking a lot of tough questions to try and come to a view of can they pick managers that will outperform that, with the orange bit of the previous slide. And then the final part is value for money, which is each of them manage, give or take, $100 million on your behalf, but they also have other clients, and so it's really billions of dollars that are being managed. And so with economies of scale means, does that mean access to, let's say, alternative private equity managers that you couldn't access directly? Does it mean fee savings for, say, a traditional manager? Are those fee savings passed on to you? How meaningful are they? So those are all of the areas that we're focusing on. Work in progress. I'll hope to come back to you in the next couple of months with the numbers actually filled in, and then this will be the basis of kind of quarterly updates going forward. Any questions for me? Otherwise, I'll pass on to Grace then.
So when you mentioned peer group, what is the number in the peer group?
423.
423.
Yeah, that was using the 1 to 3 year time period. All right, thank you very much.
Hello, Andy.
Hi, everybody. Adam Palmer with Greystone, Morgan Stanley Greystone, and TJ's going to go up in just a moment. So we appreciate the comments, Nathan, and we will keep our presentation brief. It was a perfect setup. The agenda that we're going to follow is just quickly do the performance attribution commentary. We'll look at 6 month and 1 year. Talk a little bit about the current portfolio positioning versus the benchmarks that were followed, the glide path that Nathan discussed. And then what are our changes between now and December to get us even closer to that December target. So thank you for your partnership and your time. And unless there's a question, I'll begin.
No, the only thing from moving forward, maybe so to make it go faster and so you can reference the exact pages that you have.
I'm going to do that. So we're on page 5 of our presentation.
So
oh, sorry.
No, so if they have the individual packets, it'll be easier for them to find the exact page.
That sounds good. So page 5, this is our executive summary page. This should be familiar. We'll be up on the screen. If it doesn't, that's okay. Everybody has it in hand. That's excellent. So this page should look like this here. Just a one page.
And then any scrolls on it.
The bottom left. Oh, it does. Yeah, sorry. My notes here. I'm sorry. Yeah. So we'll focus here for a moment on the manager annualized performance, which is in the middle left. And if you just look at total fund, go 2 columns over, our 6 month return, to Nathan's point, our return for the 6 month period, 5.31% positive versus our policy benchmark positive by 6.31. So below our policy benchmark are right at 1%. And then 1 column over is the 1 year number. Still a healthy return at 17.5% for the rolling 12, but also behind the policy benchmark, which was 19.78, which is behind by 2.28% over that rolling 12. You just saw the attributions for Greystone, and we totally agree with that. Some of the attributes why we're below the benchmark is our U.S. equity managers. As a reminder to the group, we pick more conservative managers that we feel in a market like we've seen, that hot growth market like we've seen that was discussed. It's not unexpected that our managers will lag that performance on the straight up. And you'll see in a moment on the bottom two lines, but on the straight down, we should make up more ground than we've lost on the up, and we have that with our up and down capture ratio. Second area of the attribution, why the portfolio fell behind over the 12 months was the private equity. Some of that legacy inherited private equity that we're in the process of getting out of also was behind. So our equity managers were up 31.5% for the 12 months, which is still a healthy return. But to Nathan's point, it was a 35% return with the policy benchmark. The private equity was -5 for 12 months, but our Preqin index that we're measured by was a positive 4.65. So those are the 2 main reasons. We have other areas that look great, which TJ is going to discuss. If you look at the since inception, which is 2 more columns over under manager annualized performance, to Nathan's point, we now have 3 years. So we're happy to see the 3-year performance. Hopefully we'll be able to show 5 and 7 and 10, but the 3-year performance does look good, and our performance is above the policy benchmark by 65 basis points. If you go just right below the since inception numbers, quickly we'll look at the historic asset growth. I think in your organization and any nonprofit endowment reserves type account, this is really what's most important. You'll see that we started October 1st of 2021 with $102,517,000. There's been withdrawals of $9,297,000 during that time frame since 2021. There's been total fees, manager fees, alternative fees, Greystone fees of $1,181,000, and then a net gain loss, a positive of a gain of $16,142,000, which is appreciation plus income. So you started at 102,517, spent just under $10 million, and you're at 108,181,000. And so that feeds into the comments that Nathan said. 2 bottom lines, and then I'll finish and pass it over to TJ. If you look on the bottom, you'll see our total fund since inception matches that number of 5.4 versus the policy benchmark at 4.75. Standard deviations are measurement of risk or volatility. We have a lower standard deviation. This portfolio is taking less risk than the benchmark. Beta also is lower, so 0.9, taking less risk than the benchmark. You'll see the maximum drawdown. That would have been in 2022. S&P 500 was down 22% or 18%. And the Barclays Index, or our bond measurement, was down roughly 13 or 14. And this portfolio was down 13.11 versus that policy benchmark down 17.08. That feeds into the portfolios we build. When we have volatility, we should look much better. On the straight up market, we feel like we could lag a little bit. Our up capture is not 100. It probably won't be 100. We'd like to see it closer to 100. When the market's up 100, this portfolio since inception has been up 96.51. But when the market is down 100, we're only capturing 90.89 of that down, which is great. So positive alpha of 1.06, that's what we want to see. That means our managers in aggregate are making a difference when you adjust for risk. And with that, I'll kick it off to TJ to dig a little more in detail. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam. Good to see everybody again. And digging into the details real quick on page 6, when we have a market like we've seen over the last year and a concentrated benchmark of 57 stocks really moving the market higher, specifically in large cap growth sectors, we don't keep up with that. We haven't built it for that in the portfolio. And on page 6, if you look at what we have in U.S. equities, we have currently 4 active managers. We've been moving a little bit more to the passive side, and 3 out of our 4 managers, if you look at the last 3 years, where we've had an up market, a down market, and a back up market, 3 out of 4 are outperforming. That's pretty good in that concentrated position or concentrated market. We did get rid of one of our large cap growth managers during the quarter. We got rid of Brown, moved those towards more passive investments, but we are happy with the managers we have right now in the U.S. space. Where we do have some more changes is on page 7. We have T. Rowe Price International. They had their lead portfolio manager is retiring. We don't have confidence in his backup team, so it's been telegraphed. We know the retirement date. We know when he's leaving. We're going through that process of replacement right now. So we're leveraging all the right resources we have, the manager resources, the research, and we're going to get best-in-class manager to replace T. Rowe Price. The second half of page 7, these are those legacy positions Adam was talking about. Prior to us being hired, there was private equity in place. And to stay in line with where our asset allocation is today, we haven't been able to add to that category. We're right in line with our benchmark. We're at 6%. Our benchmark's 5%. So we're going to stay on top of that. And at the end of this year, that benchmark moves up to 6%. So we'll be right on top of that benchmark. We're not making any changes to the private equity space at this moment, but as that glide path continues to evolve, or if we see liquidations come out of this portfolio, that's when we'll start making those decisions in that space.
Just a question on these private equity positions.
Yes, sir.
So the time we got into these, did we know, or should we anticipate that we'd be held hostage for this long?
Yes, I mean, in the liquid space, it is a 7 to 10 year time frame typically, so the prior consultant did educate on that. And when we came in, we're kind of midstream in that 4 or 5 years and all that.
And that's the J curve.
And part of that does lead to a J curve. In fact, what Kurt's talking about is paying fees on the front end, and then it takes time to build up and see returns in this. And we're starting to see some of those returns now that these are starting to mature. But where we're going to see some changes is on page 8. Private credit, Golub was one of those legacy positions that is being liquidated the first part of this next year. We're going to start implementing that into another private credit fund to continue to make that get towards that 5% target towards the end of this year. So we're starting to fill that bucket as well, and we're going to have liquidity in that space early part of next year. Fixed income has been outperforming, so we're not going to spend time there. And on page 9, our public real assets, we filled in those buckets with passive investments. For a majority of those, Invesco, opportunity, yield, dividend, commodity strategy is the one active fund that is a little bit below the benchmark. But again, it's been a very short time frame at this point. The last piece we'll talk about on page 9 is the bottom. Premium is another one of those legacy positions. And if we go to the next 3 pages in, I'm sorry, and we talk about asset allocation, we're on page 12. And we look at the bottom of page 12, where we see that red triangle. That's the premium position. We're out of compliance with the investment policy. We're waiting for that liquidity to come. We were told it'd be second half of this year. They punted. They have the ability to extend that. Given the current real estate market, it was to our benefit to stay invested. Real estate, you probably have seen in the newspapers, is all over the place. Commercial real estate has been very volatile. As rates come down, they believe they'll get prices that they expect for their portfolio. They've moved that expectation to the end of next year, second half of 2025, when we see that liquidity. So we'll provide an update early half of next year if we see that and get the update from Premium, and that'll go into the funding of the directional marketables. But to land at the end of the year, we are going to move our targets in U.S. equities down, and that is going to move to the diversifiable marketable alternatives that we currently have in place. We're just going to add to that. We're happy with the managers we currently have, the options that we put in place. We're going to add to the allocation there as well. We've seen strong performance in that asset class. So that puts us on direction towards the end of the year, and we'll continue to have conversations as we see this glide path evolve. But good performance, just a little bit behind in that U.S. and international space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions for TJ or Adam? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Evening. All right. So, try and follow suit.
Yes.
Same order, best I can. I think about this a little bit differently, so just work with the way my mind thinks about portfolios. All right, so if you're following along, I think I've got the right page number 4. So this will be the kind of the overall asset allocation. Let's start there. So as we think about this portfolio, realigning it to the new targets that Wilshire's working on, we're thinking about maximizing our return, minimizing our risk. And if we look at performance, which we'll look at here in just a moment, year to date, trailing year, most recent quarter, we're outperforming. So how do we get there? Just like Nathan was talking about. Got a couple of options to do that. We can choose to be overweight or underweight or equal weight relative to a benchmark. And we have some pretty significant tilts, and I'll walk through those first. And then we also employ currently 11 active managers, and all but 3 are outperforming significantly. So let's start with the asset allocation. I think this is the easiest way to think about it. Going back to pumpkin pie, right? How do we split the pie getting close to Thanksgiving? So on page 4, if you look at U.S. equity, we're near the upper end of the current range, right? Got an allocation range 21 to 39, we're at 39. Love domestic equities, we love domestic large cap growth equities right now, and we'll keep liking them going into next year. We also believe that there is the high possibility of additional inflation kind of coming back next year. It's likely going to continue to fuel some growth going into 2025. So if we're at full weight U.S. equities, that means we have to be a little bit underweight some other asset classes. So international equities, we're a little bit underweight relative to the target. We just see more fundamental headwinds. International equities relative to domestic. Third quarter was a great quarter for international equities because yields in the U.S. fell along with the U.S. dollar. So international equities caught a little bit of a tailwind. A lot of that's reversing already during the fourth quarter. Same with fixed income, right? Fixed income had a great total return mark because interest rates fell, now interest rates are rising, right? So a lot of volatility with fixed income. For private equity, we've been investing in a program going back to 2017 with HarborVest. If we look at that through June, we don't have the September numbers yet, but if we look at private equity through June, we're annualizing with a net IRR of 19%. So fantastic addition for compounding wealth in the portfolio. Currently, we don't have any private credit in the portfolio. We don't like private credit a lot. We're looking for some private credit that will be suitable for this portfolio, but there's starting to be a lot of concern with private credit in the overall market. We can talk more about that if you want. Directional marketable securities are kind of that asset class. We're just about in line, just a hair underweight. So
equity, long, short, some of those strategies. That's performing well. Core fixed income, I think our portfolio probably looks different than all the other portfolios. Here, we're barbelled. And what does that mean? Half the portfolio is allocated 1 to 3 month T-bills, where we still have the highest yield on the yield curve, balancing that with intermediate duration bonds. In the third quarter, that didn't work well because interest rates fell. In the fourth quarter, it looks brilliant again. So we're going to leave that position in place until the Fed significantly lowers interest rates. We don't think that's going to be for a while. Cash, kind of right in line. It's fully invested in the U.S. Treasury money market fund. Public real assets, we're very underweight here. We did start a small position. Commodities aren't performing very well if you kind of look at anything under the gold. So a little bit of energy exposure here. It's not performing well. We don't have a big allocation and not looking to significantly increase it right now. And then to round out the portfolio, diversifying marketable, kind of right on target here as well. That's also performing very nicely. So that's kind of the overall asset allocation, some significant tilts relative to targets. If you advance to page 6, we'll land here for just a moment. We'll take a look at performance, and then we'll look at the 6-month and the 1-year asset the performance attribution. So year to date through September, the portfolio is up about 11.5%. Your benchmark's 10.9. Trailing year through September, up a little over 20% versus 19.77. Again, the combination of tilts in the portfolio, active manager performance in aggregate, we'll see that in the attribution analysis, is what's driving that outperformance. A lot of detail on those 2 pages. Anyone has questions about any of the positions in the portfolio, let me know. If not, just in the essence of time, I'll jump over to what is page 9 in my book. I hope it looks like yours. I know we added a page. So this will be the 6-month attribution analysis ending September 30. So again, looking at where performance is being created relative to the benchmark, right? So overall, positive attribution analysis, anything to the right. So if you're looking at the graph on the left half of the page, anytime that there's a dot in one of the asset classes that's right of the line, that's a positive attribution. Where there is not positive attribution, we'll look at that just for a second. So directional marketable, just slightly, a few basis points to the left. Core fixed income, just like I described, significantly left because of last quarter. Interest rates fell. I think that there's going to continue to be a lot of volatility there. So we still like that position. Cash, that's just relative to the particular benchmark, right? We're right in line at 5%. Public real assets, that's our little over 1% position in what's largely energy, commodities. And then everything else is positive attribution for the 6-month period. If we look back a year, this is the one I'm not sure that you have in the deck. This would be page 10. I'll talk through it if you don't have it. It essentially is going to mirror the 6-month, the same parts of the portfolio that are detracting, directional marketable, core fixed income, public real assets are the same for the 1 year. Everything else generating positive attribution analysis. It's a lot of information to get through. I commend y'all for getting through all of this. What questions can I answer?
Anything for Mike? Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Benelli. I'll be referring to the funky colored clip here.
Nailed it.
So rather than going through this first asset performance report, which is our typical report, I'm going to point out a couple things here. So if you look at pages 3 and 4, Just want to let you know that this policy range is from March 31st, 2024. So most of the other stuff that we're going to talk about is really where we're going. So December 31st, 2024, in terms of what we're going to be targeting. And then for a handful of the private investments that we have, about 10% of the allocation, they haven't reported through September, so just keep in mind some of these numbers will change over time. So if you don't mind, can you turn to the performance addendum, which is a quick look at the 6 and 12-month returns. But just so you know, year-to-date, the fund is up about 11% compared to what we're managing, which is essentially matching the benchmark. So since our meeting 6 months ago, if you look at this top left corner, page 1, I guess, you'll see that the portfolio is up about 5.9%, trailing the benchmark by about 0.5%, and that's largely because our equities are trailing by about 0.5%. Our international equities are trailing by about 1.4%. On the U.S. side, it's the small and mid-cap exposure that we have, and a little more conservative equity income type exposure we have. And then on the international side, it's the GQG emerging markets position. That's up 3.3% over the last 6 months. And over the last year, it's up about 30+%. So really happy with the performance, just not a great 6-month period for them. And then if we look at the private equity, that's just pretty muted returns because none of our managers have posted through September 30th. They're only through June 30th right now. So just 2% return compared to benchmark at 2.5%. Our private credit did really well. Over the last 6 months, we're up about 7%, outperformed that benchmark by about 1.5%. So really happy with the returns there. And then on the directional alts, so same chart, bottom left-hand corner, you'll see that directional alts are trailing by about 3%, which is our biggest lag compared to the relative benchmarks. But if you go down to the next page, on page 2, you'll also see that directional alts are our biggest outperformer over the last year. So they've been really helpful. These are the equity long-short managers that have done exceptionally well. Still really happy with them. And we'll get to what we're going to be doing with those when we change the asset allocation. On the core fixed income, we're up about 5% over the last 6 months, basically matching the benchmark. Real assets, like Truist, we're keeping a lower profile here, trailing by about 1.2% over the last 6 months and basically since inception, but probably going to keep that position a little low. And then the diversifying alts, that's a very new position, up about 2.25% versus the matching the benchmark. So then if we look to the next page, page 2, that's the 1-year returns where we're up nearly 20%, outperforming the benchmark by about 0.5%. U.S. equities are trailing by about 2.5%, largely because of the business development companies, the BDCs, that were only up 16% over the period. Still like the positioning, still like the income we're getting from them. On the international equity side, trailing by about 1.25%, and most of that is due to the positions that we exited earlier this year, Smithson and Fundsmith. So happy we got out of them. Emerging market managers have done really well in their stead. And then private equity, we gained about 6% over the last year. Again, don't have returns through 9/30, but outperformed that benchmark by nearly 2%. McKenna did really well, being up about 7%. Portfolio advisors was up about 5% over that basically 9-month period. And then private credit, doing really well on that side. We're up about over 10%, outperforming by nearly 2%. So a lot of moves we made there, doing really well. This Cliffwater fund that we put in about 7 months ago is already up 7.25%, so really happy with that positioning. And then the directional alts we already talked about, they were up 21%, outperforming that benchmark by over 5. Alua and BlackRock were each up about 18%. SEG was up about 27% over the last year. And then core fixed income, yes, rates came down, so fixed income did really well, rising about 11%. And then cash is basically going to keep up with whatever cash is. It's a money market that invests in treasury bills, and it was up about 5% over the last year. So more importantly, let's turn to portfolio transition tab. So pages 1 and 2 really just shows the comparisons of the previous methodology of how we're classifying assets with the new methodology of how we're classifying the assets. So that's the first couple pages, kind of color coordinated with growth, defensive growth, defensive. But the where we're really going to focus our time on is that next page, page 3. So in the very first column, that's just the asset class or the sub-asset class. And then that second column is basically what the changes we've made over the last 6 months. Where pink highlights means we reduce the allocation, green highlights means we add to the allocation. And then the one column over where it's highlighted in yellow, that means we're outside of policy weight right now for 12/31/2024. And we're going to talk about how we're going to get those into policy weight. But let's just first focus on the equity side. So since the end of March, we've sold about $7.5 million out of U.S. equities to try to get into line. $5.5 million came from the large cap ETF, and about $2 million came from the small and mid cap managers, trying to keep a balance of about 70%, 75% large cap, 20-25% small and mid cap. And right now we're towards that top end of the 12/31 target of 32%, where we're at right around 30% right now. So we're going to keep it on the higher end because we still like equities, but obviously if equities continue to do well, we're going to have to begin to reduce them so we can get to that 12/31 target range, where the top end of it is 28%. So it's just going to be time dependent. We're going to try to take advantage of constructive markets and sell when we need to sell. And then on the non-U.S. equities, we've taken about $5.85 million out of non-U.S. equities. Again, that's the redemptions of Fundsmith and Smithson, which are about $6.4 million total, and we added about $550,000 in the emerging markets managers. And similar to the U.S. equities, we're within the policy range for 12/31, but we'll just continue to monitor it. If they continue to do well, we'll have to trim them just to make sure that they're within policy range. And then on the private equity side, we're right in the middle of that target range at about 5%, or 6%, sorry. We initiated a $1.5 million position in the Partners Group private equity fund, which provides immediate diversification by sector, by style, by vintage. And while we're currently in the low end of the policy range, we're going to continue to evaluate opportunities and see what we like. But there's a good chance we'll be adding to the Partners Group because we just like that broad exposure that we expect to provide downside protection in a declining market. And then on private credit, we're at about 5.08%, so right in the middle of policy range. After we added another $1 million to Cliffwater, which has done really well, again, it's up 7.3% since March. And we may be adding more to that to just continue to grow that asset class, because next year the target's going to be about 8%. So we'll continue growing that, and we like Cliffwater because it's diversified, immediate access to 20+ lending managers, 4,000 underlying credits, about 11% yield. And then on the directional marketable alts. So this is the one that has done really well for the last year. We're really overweight right now, but we're actually starting to reduce this. So we had redemption orders in for about $3.1 million worth of redemptions. So by 12/31, it's going to be closer to that target rate. And we'll probably continue to monitor this as with the chance that we're going to redeem some more from Alua, because Alua has a gate where they only allow 25% of your position to be redeemed each quarter. So we're taking out $600,000 this quarter, probably another $600,000 next quarter, just to keep it all equally weighted, because we really like all three managers. And then on the core fixed income, year to date, we've added about $3.5 million to this position, and including about $2.25 million since last meeting. So we're right in the middle of the range, right around 30%. We're going to keep it right around 30%. We may start to see more active management instead of passive management, so probably more of the Dodge and Cox Income Fund, probably less of that Vanguard ETF. And then cash, again, continue to monitor, ensuring there's no cash on hand film withdrawals, so right around 5% there. Public real assets, we added another $1 million across several of the funds that we have, and we'll, again, likely keep that towards that low end of the target. Target is 5%, we're going to keep it probably around 2-ish%. Unless we expect inflation to rise considerably. And then on the diversified marketable alts, we've invested $6 million in the last 6 months, but as you'll see, that highlighted yellow, 7.5%, we're still under policy range. So what we're going to do is when we get the proceeds from those directional marketable alts, add to the diversifying marketable alts, And the plan is likely to continue funding the managers we already have. We like this Blackstone Alternative Multi-Strategy Fund as the core exposure, very diversified. And we use Junto and River Ridge as the satellite exposures. And longer term, I expect we're going to keep this allocation probably towards that lower end of the target range, probably 12 to 15% rather than 15 to 18% range. Do I have any questions? You all have any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark. All right, regarding our OCIOs or from Wilshire, I'll get over to you.
Appreciate the effort it took to come here, guys. I know that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a safe trip.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Moving on, you're staying.
I'll stay.
Okay. Okay.
That was my best attempt at American accent as well, by the way.
All right, so what we had mentioned at our last meeting, and I will let Deborah and or Kirk, whoever wants to cover it, explain what our next Wilshire scope expansion proposal is regarding and why we're here. And we mentioned it briefly at our last meeting regarding an in-depth dig into the fees and whatnot that we have. And so this is incorporated within that.
Yes, so we've been talking offline about an expansion of other responsibilities that will help us in our fiduciary role overseeing the investments. One mechanism that we don't have currently in the Wilshire current scope of services is the deep dive into the OCIO or each investment group's fees and fee structure. So it's really a deep dive because you have to go multiple layers down to really uncover every facet of fee that we're paying, and also it will give us an idea as to what each investor gravitates towards. Are they gravitating towards an investment that provides them with higher fees, or is it providing us with the greatest return that we can have? So it helps us with that analysis. That takes somewhat of a deep dive, and what we would want is for Wilshire to do that on a regular basis, at least on the deepest level fee analysis, at least on an annual basis.
Can I interrupt
Yes.
just a moment? This is no reflection on what Matt has provided for us in the past. What he has access to, he's provided us all the detail that he can. This is a far more in-depth search and understanding of what we are paying in fees that sometimes we overlook.
Yes.
I understand each one of those managers have a different pay schedule altogether. Each one with different metrics, different models. So maybe Nathan can help us figure out how to save on this.
Yeah, if you could describe how deep down and where we're paying fees that we may not see.
Sure. So think of this as an iceberg. It's probably the best way to try and picture this. What all of you, I'm sure, are more than aware of is how much you pay to those three organizations. It's about 0.2% per annum, so 100 million each, so 200,000, give or take, a year. The second level underneath that is the managers that they appoint to manage the money. So when Mark mentioned Dodge & Cox, right, San Francisco headquartered company, they will charge a set percentage there. So that's just underneath the water in this iceberg analogy. Okay? Now, even beneath that, there are some managers. Mark also mentioned Partners Group. Mike mentioned HarborVest. They themselves appoint underlying managers that will actually manage the money. So you have a fund of fund of fund structure. At both level 2 and level 3, so just underneath the water and water that you can barely see anymore, you have, particularly within certain asset classes, so only some of these pumpkin pie slices, right? You have both the manager fees and what's called performance fees. So let's say you have a private equity manager partners group. I'm just going to use them as an example. It could be Harvest, it could be McKenna. So actually every single one of these managers has these fund of funds. Not on everything, but on part of the portfolio. We have to understand, and this is why, frankly, it takes a lot of time. You need to know what questions to ask and where areas to push into. How much, let's say, Harvest charge on each of their 6 funds that they present, and then what their performance fees is. And also within that, there's about 4 different things that they do, and each of their fees varies for each parts of their slices. And then at the 3rd level, their underlying managers have their own fees, both management and performance. And each of those fees has different, what we call kind of hurdles. So there's parts of what you're investing in where, let's just say there's sort of a hurdle of 7%. The first 7% goes to you. You own it entirely. After that 7%, however, there's a performance split. So they may get 20%, which is standard, and you get 80%. And we have to work that out at levels 2 and levels 3. And on top of all of that, there's the fund level fees. And so this is kind of why it's an iceberg. You really need to kind of go underneath the water. You need to have a good light. You need to know which areas to look at. And then you need to have the appropriate assumptions for some of it, because for a performance fee, you need to assume what performance is. And then for that to be consistent across the piece. So it really is quite an undertaking to kind of gather that data and then actually then try and present it in a way that's meaningful.
Are we paying approximately equal for each one of these
No.
companies, or is one is maybe more than the other?
So at level 1, above the surface, yeah, there's, we're really grasping at straws. But underneath those level 2s and 3s, which I think part of what Matt was provided with before had part of level 2, but probably not all of it, and also probably close to 0 of level 3. It's really hard to tell, because you'll ask, and it's not trying to denigrate them, but you'll ask one of the 3 providers and they'll give you a number. There's no way to kind of subcategorize it to say how much it is of each. But underneath it, big difference. You will actually see Greystone's fees when we've done our first kind of pass at this are much more than Truist's.
Is there anything you can do about it, or are you just providing information? The fees are what the fees are.
So initially, it's information gathering, information providing, contextualizing. And there probably will be a future point, to Greystone's point, their fees are twice as much, but they're twice as much because stuff they can't get out of that they inherited, right? It's probably part for a deeper dive in future, but I have a philosophy where if you're paying an organization to run a private equity program, and then they're essentially outsourcing all of that to another organization, I want to look at what they're paid for that part of that pumpkin pie.
Well, I mean, it's all going to net out of the reserve. I mean, so if I'm paying one company twice as much as the other company, but they're providing more of a return.
So good. Yeah.
So
we don't want to. We're not in the let's get the lowest possible fees and therefore the worst possible returns.
Right.
It's not that. And that was the contextualizing part. So thank you, Ken. You're helping me to kind of pack this. We provide the fee information, but we provide it in the context of the net of fees returns that each of them have provided. So let's say that Truist has the lowest fees, but the lowest returns. We're not going to say they've done a phenomenal job.
Right.
Nor are we going to say Greystone has the highest fees, but actually over the last 3 years, you kind of saw on the dashboard, they're the only manager that's ahead of the benchmark, and the only manager that's ahead of the peer group median.
Right, and so I guess that's my question, kind of regardless of the fees, I think the metric that we're going to use to assess their, whether they did a good job or not, is not the return that they're providing over the 1, 3, 5 year period ultimately what we're going to decide on, regardless of what their fees are?
It's going to, yeah. I don't think it's quite that, but it's close to that. I would suggest and recommend what you ultimately focus on, but it may take us a while to get there, is what is the net of fee return that's being achieved, but also what was the fee that you paid for them to achieve that.
All right, so it was, what was it, $10,000 or something like that?
To do the, I think that's what.
What's going to be the ROI on that investment?
For him to.
How long is a piece of string, right?
Will that work? Net us anything? Will we be able to go back and
So I
negotiate
think
fees?
it's-
I'm just saying, is there,
Yeah,
other than
is there
information,
a
what
chance
does it
of
provide?
It's hard to say right now definitively there will be a definite fee reduction that you can achieve. Part of what we're trying to do is actually just bring awareness and make sure that that fiduciary responsibility under the charter is you actually have this awareness of what the fees are. That will, I don't like to do things for the sake of ticking a box, so it will lead to discussions on where their fees are and where it's appropriate, whether at their level, the underlying levels, changing the way things are done for fees to be saved were we not to go through with this exercise. But to try and quantify that right now at outset, I can't do that.
So, I'm sorry, Rusty.
No, I was just going to say that to me, I see the value in this, the awareness and to know what it is. I don't think it's going to be a negotiating point.
And if they were.
And it ought not to be a negotiating point probably, but to be aware of it, so at least we know.
They did not come to us and offer this, we went to them and asked for it. Because we've always had questions about what our total fee structure is and what we're paying. And so we felt that it was very important
Yeah.
to get to the bottom and understand what we're paying, so we are fiduciary, what's the word?
Fiduciary.
Thank you, responsible,
Spoken.
whatever.
Yeah, and the public needs to, I think they need to know, just to know.
I have a generic question for you. I know I don't want to take too much time, but I've been on these discussions for almost 7-8 years now. Consistently, no matter how much we pay any of these managers, they always underperform the benchmark. So, and that was
Apart from reasoning in the last 3 years.
Half of $1.8 million for managing, if you can just put allocation to S&P 500 or something and do better than what you're doing right now. I don't understand this. Help me out. Maybe I'm
Of why we're not just holding a singular investment. Yeah, okay. That's I guess that's related to fees, but slightly less about it. There are probably two parts to that. One goes back to the governance of how we are essentially all under a fiduciary responsibility to manage this portfolio, and it has preservation of capital. With equities, whilst looking backwards is always hindsight 2020, right? You know exactly what's happened. It's the easiest thing to do in the world. And but if we were to stand here 2 years ago, September 2022, we've lost 25%. And then Matt and the team are looking at the position in August, and there's going to be an impact on what the 4% spending is and the impact on Marion County residents. That's a bitter pill to swallow. So that's part of it, is, with equity markets, they've done great, but a big part of the reason they've done great is not actually the earnings, it's because people think they're continually worth more. I will buy a company and be willing to pay the 30 times the annual revenue of that company just to own it because I think it's brilliant. Whereas, 5 years ago, that was probably 18 times. That is, frankly, not, in and of itself, as the whole piece is not in line with what we've been entrusted to do. We've been entrusted to try and, govern and steward this whole pot for eternity to be able to make this annual spending at a consistent rate to support all of these programs and grow it over and above inflation. So those are probably the two main reasons why we're not just holding the S&P 500 tracker.
Kurt, did you need to add to anything else that this is providing us?
Well, yeah,
Okay.
and we can always come back to that too. The other primary thing is, in the background, when the investors are about to subscribe to, let's say, an alternative investment, they obligate us, just like you were talking about. Were we aware that we were going to be in this J curve where we would have negative earnings for a while until it hits a certain point where we've invested, so you're locked in. Otherwise, if we wanted to get out of the investment, we would automatically lose. So one of the key things is none of us are qualified to evaluate the subscriptions and our obligation And that's something that's not under our current Wilshire contract. And so one of the things that we said was a gap in what we do is when these investors are obligating us to an alternative investment that's going to be long-term and what the subscription requirements are, we would ask Wilshire to take on that fiduciary responsibility and advise us, hey, this is something that you guys need to be aware of, and you can at least act as, Wilshire can act as an intermediary to ask questions on our behalf about the obligation and ask the questions that we just wouldn't know about what they're investing in. Because as of right now, we get requests saying, hey, we're about to start investing in this new liquid alternative, and we want to start investing. Here's a first opportunity, and it's done over years. So you really can't stop. You have to continue with the investments till they get to the point where they're fully invested at the point that they want. So that's another facet to this that's really not seen. It's behind the scenes, but we deal with all the times with requests to fill out subscriptions or basically allow the advisors to continue, but we don't have a mechanism to evaluate, is it a good investment, what's our obligation?
So the request is an additional $10,000 to their current contract to do the extra services we're asking.
And that was
So to do this, so to kind of stand in the gap for our fiduciary to assess investments and provide advice as to whether we should proceed. And then that's part of it. The other part is to do a deep dive on the fee structure.
Routinely, once a year.
And that service will start, I guess, in the fourth quarter of this year, if we move forward?
I don't know.
Fourth quarter, okay.
This is a 1 year
And then,
contract, or something, or
It's
perpetual?
No, their contract is currently 3 years.
3 years from,
So
so
it's
1 year and
additional
2 years left.
10,000 every year for 3 years?
Yeah, it would be an addendum.
It would be an addendum to their current contract.
So it would be 2 more
Yeah,
years.
it's over here.
of course, I got to ask Matt, then, do we expense this from our investment earnings, or would it be a direct expense, the $10,000?
It would be direct.
It would be direct. And so the fees we pay now to Wilshire, is that a direct expense?
Correct.
It's not netted from our investment earnings?
Correct. Paid to Wilshire directly as opposed to through the investment. What?
It's netted.
It is
It's
netted.
netted.
Okay, it's
Oh,
netted, I'm
okay.
sorry.
Okay, and the 10,000 will be netted too.
Correct.
Is that the right way to do it? I don't know, that's a question, I mean, really.
It's a great question. I don't know the answer to that one, Rusty. I would say, yeah, I would lean yes, because that's for all the advisors' fees.
Yeah, I guess this one here is a little different because, I don't want to talk about, I'm just talking about here. So this one is a consulting fee outside of just what Wilshire typically do to give us some more, fiduciary responsibilities, information. So just thinking, I would say, think about it. It may be a direct expense. What I think, it's very nominal, but it will deter from their term, right?
Certainly. And I think it's the most quantifiable. It's impossible to budget out. It'd be very easy to budget out a $100,000 annual contract. Okay, it'd be impossible to budget out the advisor fees, which are indexed. So this one could very, very easily be peeled out.
This one here.
separately budgeted going forward, just like my
Yes.
expense of the budget, the attorney's expense is part of the budget. We could certainly pull it out separate.
Other questions of Nathan Weiss here to help us with this, or Kirk, or Deborah?
I move to fund this 10,000 additional for the next couple of years.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Yes. So, the fee question, what I heard the basis for that was, we just need to know. I don't know that once we kind of know and have an idea of it, and if it's not really a negotiating tool, ultimately their performance at the end of the, how many dollars they put on the bottom line is what's going to determine whether we keep them or not. I would prefer to vote, yes, we do it one time to see if it's worth pursuing. And if, again, we can't do anything about it, but then on an ongoing basis, engage it to help with the investment analysis as to whether we should do this type of investment, here's the commitment, or I just don't see the ongoing need to have a rolling fee schedule if we're not gonna do much about it. I mean, I think we'll learn what we're gonna learn, and at that point, maybe we continue to do it, but I don't know that signing up for another 2 years of it makes sense to me.
So what, two parts of this, and one part of it is that normally when we get the fees from the investors, we're approving it, not knowing really what we're approving, if you will. Not in a, shouldn't say, I mean, we're getting an invoice, and we've been asking Nathan to review it to make sure that it's okay. It's not in the scope of his current services.
We have been asking you to do
And
other
he's-
services,
Correct.
and so it's an expansion.
Well, thank you.
It's a scope expansion of what
Right.
we originally signed on for. Things that we didn't have before that could have been very useful to us and how we move forward. In the past, we have had just the top level fees that we knew about, and we did approach those OCIOs and ask for a reduction in their fees. We have done that in the past. So it is useful information.
Yeah, I just, and maybe I'm seeing it wrong, but it just feels like if, as opposed to committing the day for 2 years of that service, I feel like we're gonna learn a lot. And it's a deep, it sounds like it's a lot of work to go ferret out all of these fees. That, if we see it once and we go, okay, that sounds right, or we don't have the ability to influence it, I just don't see the ongoing value of having him spend the time trying to ferret that out on a quarterly basis. If it doesn't merit anything, and I'd rather spend money getting advice or having him assess whether we need, I don't mind spending the money, it's just that, the effort that you're gonna have to spend based on the way you described it, didn't sound like it'd be a good use of his time.
Well, as a follow-up to that, Ken, then, how much of this fee structure after the initial year would be allocated to the so-called deep dive versus giving advice on new subscriptions, new investments?
How long is a piece of string?
Don't put you on, I'm not meaning to put you on the spot here, but I think what I heard is that there were two different components to that fee. One was the deep dive,
analysis.
and there also was another consulting fee to consult us about
Subscriptions for alternatives
Right.
that,
Which is an ongoing all the time.
That's, but to Ken's point, that is ongoing. The other one is just an initial
Right.
deep dive.
I think in the scheme of things, the amount of money we pay for these badges, I think any brand a year is worth it. That's what I think. Even if we get an idea how we're spending long term, I think it's 1.8 million. Approximately what we spend this week.
Actually, more.
No, because they keep sending invoices, we pay them. I think it's a good learning curve, and I think it's a good experience we can have. And it's well worth money spent.
Michelle, did you have something on that?
I was just wondering if there was a reason why these three entities could not provide that by fund to their particular, you get this every quarter. Could there not be an added sheet that they actually show you, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, so you really do get the bottom line of what it has cost you to make that money?
Well, I will let Nathan answer that, but I will tell you that was a question brought up by Rich at the last one, that why don't we ask them what we're paying? And we don't have the knowledge to know what to ask.
I serve on another foundation board that has two different entities that they invest with, and each one of them provide a bottom sheet to what those actual fees have cost.
Do you want to add to that?
I think the best proof point, and again, that question was asked. We've also done a ton of work. There's $1 million difference.
That is what we found in the case. We thought we were paying 1.8 and it's actually 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So I was wrong.
Which is again,
I think
a reason to be transparent and to get to transparency of what is it costing you to make that money.
So, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I don't want that statement to be, they are deliberately, there's no fraud or they're deliberately trying to hide. Like, that's why I kind of describe that as an iceberg. You almost need to submerge yourself and you need to know exactly what you're looking for. Because they could provide a line-by-line item and let's say that's McKenna, Perpetual Private Equity. That's just the level 2 stuff. It's not that they're hiding it, but they wouldn't even know how to ask the questions, maybe even themselves on the level 3 stuff.
It's just part of the business. I mean, that is how the business is run.
So we have a motion on the table.
We have a second motion, so.
We have a second. We had discussion. Is there any change to the motion on the table?
Well, I mean, we got to get at it, but I am curious about if there's any difference between the deep dive versus ongoing consultation on subscriptions and new investments.
I mean, for the purposes of this motion, I mean, would you be okay just doing it for 1 year and then we reanalyze it the next year?
Yeah, I mean, we can, there's 2 quick questions here. I'll answer yours first. Like Wilshire's contract is 3 years. We're here to try and be the best possible partner we can. So we can try and figure something out that works that way. To your question, Randy, it is obviously hard subscription documentation. Like we set this glide path, there's going to be a ton over the next 2 years until the remainder of Wilshire's contract to do. Then there's Deborah's point, which was not just what the fee dive is and all of those levels, but on a quarterly basis when Greystone, Crescent, Truist send through, please send us 50, 60, whatever, $1,000. There's that which is obviously every quarter. Frankly, we didn't map it out as, I think Project C of that just annual deep dive will take X number of hours. And Project B and Project C will take X number of hours. We're trying to be a good partner. We think of something that what we think is a very, very fair kind of addition to the existing price of our contract and kind of leave it at that, on the basis it's done once a year. And yes, there's probably more work the first time, but I've also done this before, there'll be a lot of work the second time as well.
Okay, so where are we at on the motion?
Call the question.
Yeah, you have to, motion, second
Okay,
discussion,
so-
now you have to vote.
So we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right. All right, Rusty, moving on.
And thank you, Madam Chair. So the first on my part of the agenda is the interlocal agreement to monitor the potential opioid settlement funds. This interlocal agreement with the Marion County. I think y'all aware that we are going to be monitoring and administering those funds. We are being compensated a fee up not to exceed 5%. Basically, we're going to get reimbursed, which does include part of the salary of the new employee we're bringing on to help monitor and use information. Anyways, it's a good agreement. It needs action, Madam Chair.
So we have if everyone has read it, it was in the packet.
Legal counsel, you have anything to add?
And it's been reviewed for formal legality by our office, so
Thanks.
All right, we need a motion to accept,
So moved.
and we need a second.
Motion dies.
Okay, we got the second from Dr. Harold. Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Any opposed? Motion passes. Domestic violence.
Domestic violence, we do need to have approval to open up another account. Just not the one?
We did open the account, we were just letting them know that it happened and that it was a money market account.
Okay.
We have prior approval.
Okay. So this is to let you know we did open it, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's the wrong bank, but the right thing to do.
I agree.
We didn't want you guys not to be able to vote.
Also, I think on your agenda is the return of the funds from North Florida. There was $321,000 that was returned back to the to our agency because of the Heart of Florida get the details on it, but the.
So mobile bus.
The mobile bus they sold, yeah, the mobile bus they sold, so anyways, let you know that we did, those funds were returned, and I guess that went back into the general fund, Matt?
Trustee designated.
Trustee, there you go, so we'll.
Yes, sir.
We spent it all today, right?
So that just paid for.
We got a 321 plan.
Yeah, there you go.
We did it 6 times.
You sell this bus, and we'll get it.
It was added back to the funds available for the budget that you all approved last month.
Okay.
Somebody actually get their money back.
That's correct.
And then I'm gonna let Crystal go with the balance scorecard. Crystal?
In 1 hour or less.
Listen.
Everybody's
No
gone.
pressure. I was kept crossing stuff out as the time was getting longer. But if everybody can, just, oh, thank you for coming up. 67. It is the end of the night when you want to go home, but the balance scorecard is something important that we do need to take a look at. A balance scorecard, if anybody has not utilized one in your own company, it outlines the organization's progress in aligning its activities with strategic goals that the organization sets up. This is the second year that we're doing this. Ken earlier asked, he said, a year from now, what would success look like? Well, this is exactly what we're saying success will look like in a year. Obviously, a scorecard ebbs and flows. Sometimes we aren't 100% perfect on all of it, but we're able to have a track to look at and a road to go down and see where we have made improvements and where we need to make improvements. It helps us keep a structured focus on the core components of the balanced scorecard that enables Kurt and Deborah and the board to make informed decisions based on data, prioritizing resources, and identifying areas where we need to grow. The components of our balanced scorecard, they consist of the customer. When you look to the left at the top, you will see one of our areas. It's called customer. The components in this area address the health needs of our community. They focus on community satisfaction and awareness across all of our various health services. The internal portion focuses on aspects that target organizational visibility and program access by increasing awareness through digital media and events, as well as program alignment with our standards. I told you I did cut this down, so. The next section is employees. We want to make sure that we as employees are focusing on our professional development. We're encouraging staff to gain skills relevant to the organization's core services and our own goals that we set. It also can talk about retention when you're looking at employees in a balanced scorecard. The financial, this component speaks for itself. It underscores financial sustainability. For the board, all of these results, if you do ever want to look on an ongoing basis, anytime, anywhere, they're all housed in Mindshare. You'll be able to see this exact format in Mindshare. And if you want to dig a little deeper, you're able to do that as well. If you get stuck, I am available to you anytime. Just a reminder, call me if you get stuck. A quick overview of last year's balance scorecard. So customer satisfaction. We reached 74% of survey goal. We completed 5,531 customer satisfaction surveys with a 94.7% satisfaction rate. These 94.7 people were happy with the services that were provided through MCHD funded programs. This should be noted that last year we completed 530 surveys.
You're kind of mad about that.
We did just start the customer satisfaction surveys last year, but they have pushed very hard to get them done. Me and Brandy look at our grantees and programs on a monthly basis and tell them how much of their goal they have met and how much more they need to reach. The customer satisfaction surveys not only gives us a gauge on customer satisfaction, but selfishly it also gives us data that we need and we want for some of our other goals, specifically demographic information with zip codes. So our goal up here, the 5,531, sorry, our achieve rate, does not account for 1,900 surveys that were also done through shared funders, specifically LSF with estimate. I wanted to take a look at those because we don't have access to those, and I was able to obtain them, and they also received an average score of 4.46 out of 5. So they are also doing well. Community health insights, we successfully completed initiatives to improve health data collection. This is the zip codes from the customer satisfaction survey, where we were able to develop a heat map. We analyzed emergency room admission trends and provided valuable insights to the board for strategic planning. I know you all remember those workshops. Programmatic impact, we exceeded our target with 185,219 impacts across our service areas this year. Quick reminder, impact is the total number of consumers served through all of our MCHD funded programs. These consumer counts can be duplicated across programs, but never within programs. So when you hear us say unique client count, we are talking about all of our programs. Specifically, this year we've made a big push to make sure we have unduplicated unique client counts in each of our programs. But when we total them up, we no longer can say they're unduplicated because a consumer can access multiple services in all of our different programs. Community engagement and awareness, we have achieved an impressive over 1.9 million impressions across digital campaigns enhancing awareness and accessibility of our programs. Employee development, we met training and professional development goals. All of staff completed required training hours and everyone engaged in site visits to explore innovative programs in other areas. Our financial performance, as you all know, you all learned about, we are on target with we surpassed our target with a 4.4% annual portfolio investment goal. We surpassed that very much so. And secured $2 million outside funding. Any questions of the last year's scorecard before I go very quickly to our scorecard of next year? So just some highlights. Our scorecard for this upcoming fiscal year, we're focused on setting higher targets to drive greater impact across our 4 areas. Again, customer engagement, internal efficiency, employee development, and financial sustainability. A few goals are remaining the same this year. Number 1, and when I do say numbers, it's on the left-hand side. But number 1 aims to increase awareness and satisfaction across programs. We are upping our target to 9,260 surveys, but the goal remains the same, which is 5% of our impact in the previous fiscal year. Number 5, we are going to continue to set a high goal, 90% of program goal completion. Just in case you aren't aware, all of our programs set goals for themselves, at least 5 performance objectives, give or take each of them set, and then Brandy, myself, Jessica, we monitor them internally. So new goals, our new goals, all of our other goals are new, so I'm just going to highlight a few of them. If you have any questions, please ask me. If you don't want to ask me now, it's late, you can call me again anytime. My office is always open. Number 2, specific research analysis of programs that may fit into the new MCHD pillars so that they may be presented to the board for consideration. Number 3 is leveraging the heat map data that we have gained the last fiscal year, adding some data from multiple sources that we can utilize in the county to address those service gaps and coming up with a plan to address those service gaps. Number 6, ensuring that our programs are working together and utilizing each other. Communication is key. To do this, we want to have at least one community event that at least 75% of our funded programs are in attendance, not just in attendance, but participating in. Number 7, conducting and tracking quarterly reviews of grantee adherence, ensuring consistent program quality and responsiveness. As most of you know, we have implemented a quality review process that we're doing on a quarterly and an annual basis. And now we're going to start tracking the completion of those and making sure that the programs that we fund are held accountable. Next year, or this fiscal year I should say, you'll see an emphasis placed on professional growth, with 100% of employees required to set measurable development goals. Training hours and site visits to innovative programs are encouraged to foster alignment with organization's pillars. Financial goals, they remain the same. Overall, the updated balanced scorecard sets a framework for continued growth, accountability, and resource optimization, aligned with organizational goals and community impact. Any questions?
A lot of work went into this.
Thank you.
And thank you for our results. However, for the balanced scorecard for fiscal year 24 and 25, so we need a motion to approve as presented.
Motion.
We have a motion from Clark. We have a second from Ken. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All righty, thank you very much, Rusty. Matt?
All right, I know it's late, I'm gonna try to move through this as quickly as possible. I'll move approval. And we don't even need approval for this. So pursuant to the lease agreement between Marion County Hospital District and Advent Health, they are required to submit an annual report to us that sets forth whether or not they're complying with 9 different obligations under the lease. The first 2 are the scope of health, and we've reviewed this, and they are in compliance with all of the terms. I'm going to try to move to the meat of it as quickly as possible. There has been no change in the scope of services, nor has there been a change in the provision of the required services under the lease. The real meat of the report is the description of Advent's capital spending in the last year and their improvements to the healthcare facilities. Pursuant to Article 7.7, Section A, Advent is required to fund capital expenditures in an amount not less than 4% of the annual net revenue. It's a very broadly defined term for capital expenditures. It's things such as new equipment, facility renovations, medical office space, development of new services. I've done what every lawyer hates to do and done math. Their annual net revenue is $460,229,400. The minimum they have to spend, which is 4%, would be $18,409,176. And they exceeded that requirement by over $11 million. They spent $29,617,494 on capital expenditures. The other big ticket item is pursuant to Articles 7.7, Section B. Advent is required to fund $150 million for facility plan projects as are defined by the lease. There was a 9th amendment to the lease that was executed on December 12th, 2023. That extended the time period to spend a total of $150 million from December 31st of 2023 to March 31st of 2025. This last year, Advent spent $16,930,000, and they have to spend a remaining balance of $12,112,096 on the facility plan projects no later than March 31st of 2025 in order to comply with the lease. There's been no physician recruitment issues that they've identified that would rise to the level of an issue as set forth in the lease. And there's also some broad and undefined terms in the lease that they have to set forth achievement rates and benchmarks and annual goals. You know, based on the language of the lease, they have complied with those. They are included in the supplemental packet that's sitting on the table behind Kurt, should any of the trustees wish to review them, along with the annual AHCA report. That being said, does anyone have any questions?
I hate to ask a question, you know, it's late, but, and maybe Dr. Harrell can address this. It does say here that they have not terminated all these services, and one of them is pediatrics. And I know it wasn't this year, but last year, didn't they terminate the acute care pediatrics?
No, the inpatient.
Inpatient,
Yes,
inpatient.
yes.
And we approved it, but I mean, I think the report reflected that no longer is part of their services. Right?
And that's new, that was not included in their report, and that's
It was
new information.
correct.
That's all,
They omitted.
all right to them and make sure that report gets amended.
Isn't that correct?
So that wasn't, it might have even been 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be from last year to this
Okay.
year for sure.
Would it have
But
been?
the scope of their practice has definitely changed.
Would it have been, so the reporting period was April 1st of 23 through March 31st of 24?
I think it was
I can-
before that.
Okay,
You
that
recall
makes
what
sense.
year
Like, so
Yeah.
if it was before that.
Yeah, it was the year before, I
Okay.
believe. However, yeah, that is one of those sticking points that I think we need to have resolved. We've gone back and forth a little bit. I think the nuance to it is CHS, when they had the lease with the hospital district, they had certain services that they hadn't implemented yet, but they were planned. CHS leaves sub-leases to Advent Health. So Advent Health, I believe, felt, well, we didn't modify anything because it wasn't there yet. So, but then, Dr. Harrell, you work directly in the pediatrics, and
There's
so.
always been a PTO until like 2 years ago.
So that's the nuance that we have to clear up, because I think it's something that maybe Advent Health is just not aware of.
And that maybe.
Yeah, or at least leadership, and it's one of those that we have to get a resolution.
But didn't this body acknowledge that they did, in fact, discontinue that service and approve that?
From what I remember, they claimed that they had services.
I know they
They
claim,
said
they
they
claimed
did not have
it,
the
they
queue
claimed
services,
it wasn't
they had
existent, and they took it over, therefore they never really did. But we addressed that at this body here at some point in time in the last 2 years.
We
Yeah, that's
addressed,
what I'm trying to tell you. I think the discussion was that they had services, but they didn't have any acute services. They had pediatric services to run it.
the nuance again, and we had some meetings in between.
Okay.
Where Dr. Harrell attended, and I think it's more a matter of, they said that they had
They have
beds.
pediatric beds, but there's, the beds I think that they're talking about are in the emergency room.
Yeah, they had
And
some
not on the
services.
pediatric floor for inpatient
Yeah.
beds. They have no inpatient beds.
I don't know, Pete, so.
Well, my point is, I think
There's no
the.
beds in Marion County. This is like not a service, right? There's nowhere to admit kids in Marion County.
But they have
The
emergency
hospital.
services.
None.
You were gonna say.
No, but my point bringing it up is I think the report ought to be an accurate reflection, and this currently does not reflect that, because.
That if it was during.
Whatever year we did it or didn't do it, I mean, and then one last thing, and I'll shut up, and that is that under the annual goals, it says that leases sets no precedence on providing current provided information in future annual reports. What does that mean?
Say that one more time?
It says lessee sets no precedence for providing currently provided information in future annual reports. So they don't define their goals.
Right.
We
And they're
never
saying,
define the
basically,
goals.
they're basically saying that we're not obligating ourselves to be held to this moving forward.
Yeah, and I guess the
Based on my
point on
reading.
that is that if we ever come up to the point again, we have to give them something, we ought to maybe take a little time and define some
Correct.
goals.
And Rob and I have talked about that as well as
Okay.
other issues in the whole audit, because it'd be, part of the problem is they're broadly defined and there's no teeth to enforce them. And, you know, technically, all they have to do is set a goal. There's not, the lease doesn't say you've got to try to comply with it. It's fairly broad on that area, and I agree, it's something that probably does need to be addressed.
But we can't do it until they ask us or something.
Yeah, next time they want to modify the lease, that's when you put come down and face it.
And then, I lied, I don't want to, it's not a question.
I was gonna take over on the bed anyway.
I'll be absent next meeting, okay? I have no idea what an audit report, did y'all look at those audit, does that mean, are the audit reports in there? Do those look okay?
Yeah, legally speaking, all they had to do to us was submit what was submitted to the AHCA.
Okay,
so
that's it, okay.
That's the,
Okay.
Now I'm done.
Okay. Other questions for Matt? Okay, thank you, Matt. Matt,
Hey, not
Wrap
included,
us up.
not included on the agenda, but in everybody's packet is like a formalized version of the budget that was approved at last meeting. no real discussion points about that. It's already been changed twice since we've been sitting here for the better part of the evening. So it'll be, next financial report, we'll have an updated version of it in the back. But the agenda item that we need approval for would be the financial statements for the period ended September 30th, 2024. Also is our fiscal year end. So the numbers that we're looking at now are to the best of the knowledge that we have. The audit will start. Purvis Gray and Company, a CPA firm in Ocala, performs the audit. They will start next month in November. And there will be adjustments made to the balances we're looking at, not by virtue of errors, but by virtue of new information coming out as we go. Specifically with regard to the investments, as mentioned earlier, they will have trailing statements that will value all the way through the issuance date, as well as the current pension plan of the organization, which we participate in, FRS. They don't even issue their annual reports until January. So there will be changes to the balance sheet income statement you're looking at as new information comes out. But that audit process is actually already started, the preliminary planning stage. But included on page 77 of those financial statements, you'll see on the balance sheet, again, most significantly, investments. We heard a lot about that. I will say that we had a buildup of cash right at the end of the fiscal year, so we could be prepared to fund our partners for Q1 2024-2025 fiscal year. Not much else to talk about in the balance sheet. From my perspective, after that, we get to the income statement, where we realize significant investment gains and earnings. And then finally, we have, we're in compliance with our budget across all, the single fund across the budget of our expenditures. So if there's any questions, I would love to answer them. If not, I'm sure we'd all love to approve them.
I'm saying nothing.
Are there any questions for Matt?
Harvey's having.
I think you know.
Are there any other questions?
Of course, a motion.
Oh. Okay, we have a motion and we have a second out here. Do we have any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All righty.